Also the earliest, probably one of the earliest incubator focused exclusively on AI. Was the first report last 4 years ago. We helped,
I believe it wasn't me, but
we helped almost close to 100 AI startups to find their product market fit, to put together the right team and raise funding. So it's fascinating for us to see the evolution and the growth in the field of AI across different areas.
So as a cross-border incubator, are you mostly recruiting entrepreneurs, engineers in the United States and bring them to China? How does it work?
We recruit teams and invest in startups in all the different locations.
Okay.
Not just the US.
Great. Okay. Rocky?
Yeah, thank you, Rolfe. So I'm a lawyer, probably these every person up here, I suppose. I'm a managing partner at Mallesons. It's a Chinese law firm. We're a big law firm based in Asia, and I do deals. I do tech deals, and I know there's a lot of angels, investors, and entrepreneurs here. I unfortunately do large size deals, the ones that they talk about that kind of change valuation quite a bit. So most of the time I do sort of north of $1 billion deals, cash invested. So the target has to be anywhere between $3 billion and up. So that's what I do, and cash tend to be larger checks out of the rest of the world.
Are those changing these days?
It's coming down quite a bit, so I think maybe that's why there's references to Winkler, because the capital market is not really sort of agreeing with the private market valuation, but that's a different issue that we can talk about.
Really? I mean, we just UiPath just raised $700 million or whatever at $7 billion.
I understand, yeah. I think the real issue is that liquidity for a lot of these investors that are late stage, they have a 6 month lockup. So when you see these really mega deals, and just curious, does anybody who know what is the most valuable unicorn? Does anybody have a sense? Which country is it? China. Which one? TikTok is 75 million.
Yeah, buy that.
And financial, 175 billion. That's like the size of a private company that's pre-IPO, right? That's a very large valuation if you think about it. And if you look at the most recent data, roughly about 96 unicorns out of the US, 126 out of China. And if you add the rest of the world together, you get 10 more. So that's kind of where the world is headed. So capital is actually capital is going to follow where the best companies are, right? So the idea is that capital is relatively smart, and capital will go to companies and I guess innovative companies that have very large markets. So you're looking at basically US being a very large market and China being a very large market, and both are very advanced in terms of how their general consumers have adapted to technology. So capital will flow to those locations. And we do deals across these two jurisdictions.
If it's allowed to cross borders too, but that's a whole. We can get into that in a minute. Dmitry, you want to jump in?
Sure. So I'm Dmitry. My background, I'm a technology entrepreneur and investor. I built a couple of companies as an entrepreneur. The most interesting of which is a company called IVI, which is sort of Netflix of Russia, so the largest online media business in Russia and former Soviet Union. I'm now, for the past, I guess since 1999, mostly focused on investing. I run a fund which is called Frontier Ventures. We're based here in Silicon Valley, but we're a little bit different from kind of a typical US venture fund in the sense that we're much more global than most of the funds.
Global in terms of where your funds come from?
Well,
your
both,
LPs?
really, both. In terms of where we invest, we have a global mandate. We have companies that operate in over 25 markets, primarily in North America, Asia, Europe, but we have some markets like Latin America and Africa.
So you're investing broadly, and you're also, and your funding, your LPs come from all over the world?
Yeah, our LPs are just as global as our investments. So we have investors from US, from Europe, from even India, Turkey. So it's really quite global.
Okay, and Anna, you want to jump in? Tell us about Tech Ventures.
So my name is Anna Dvornikova. I'm originally from Russia, but I've been living in the US for more than 20 years, so home is here. I have a fund called TEC Ventures, and we're 3 partners in the fund. We invest in startups at the very early stage, and more or less we're industry agnostic. We don't invest in heavy tech, we don't invest in gaming, but other than that, at the early stage.
Super early stage. So on one hand, we have Rocky doing deals over $1 billion. You're writing checks for $25,000.
Starting, we can write
Well
a check for
represented.
100,000, but yes.
We're well represented here. Okay, well, the title of the panel we got is Global Investors in Silicon Valley. What's changed for global investors this year? Who has, not all at once, who wants to answer that? Rocky will jump in.
So I work with Chinese capital. Obviously, that's in the news quite a bit, not always in the best light. So depending on how you look at it, China capital is really capital that is from China. And I want to be very specific. Typically, when we look at capital from China, there's two types of capital. There's China capital that is local currency, and there's actually US dollars out of Hong Kong. A lot of people don't recognize that Hong Kong is actually a separate jurisdiction. So there's a lot of money that's coming into the valley directly from China, as well as sort of peripheral from Hong Kong, from Asia, right? And that has actually seen quite a bit of sort of, I think 2018, 2017 were two busy years, right? You've seen a lot of deals, whether it's the Chinese conglomerates or investors buying into real estate, industries that are traditional, like automotive, manufacturing, and you see tech, right? So a lot of money came to China, but then the rules have more or less changed in a way so that Chinese capital is actually now sort of at a much lower sort of level than before.
Persona non grata.
That's right. So I think that's going to be the trend going forward. I think those of us who are in the pipeline of doing cross-border deals, we used to see a lot of large funds, investors coming to the U.S., looking at all sorts of asset classes. It's not just tech, not just Silicon Valley, but all across the United States. But we are now seeing sort of this kind of narrowing down to very specific sectors. A lot of people ask me what are the hot sectors that people from Asia still look at. One is healthcare. And I know there was an early audience who said that healthcare seems to be pretty high. It's because Chinese capital is still looking at it. The other is basically what we call sort of automotive tech. And that's because China is still driving the desire to have automotive manufacturing, smart vehicles, electric vehicles, and whatnot. So
Is Chinese capital able to invest in these areas here?
In general, they can, but there are indeed rules against that now. And I think depending on whether the analysts here are also thinking foreign capital now have to look at CFIUS, right? There was a lawyer who talked about this set of rules. This is actually a very old set of rules that's been around for 30, 40 years. It's about not permitting foreign capital to invest in national security interests or targets or assets that present national security risk. That's very logical. So historically, if you invest in anything in the military or whatnot, that's obviously a no. Or if you invest in a location even that's close to a military base, that's a no. But now today, that's been broadly defined to include other things.
It's going to be even more broadly defined later. Hey, let's check in with these other guys. Have you, Dmitry, have you seen any impact as you have to declare your deals? Do you have to do anything differently?
Well, we're not investing in the sectors that are subject to CFIUS. So, for instance, we're not really.
You weren't anyway, or you're starting to avoid them as a result of this?
We have not been invested historically, so it's not an issue for us. And to add to what Rocky has said, in terms of what we've observed in the market, and this is not an observation of this year, but maybe in the past 5 years or so, we now see increasingly companies, and that is also true for US companies and global companies, just scaling globally much faster than they used to. So 10 years ago, you wouldn't really think about a foreign market outside of the US, for at least 5-10 years, right? These days, we have companies that launched in 6 different countries, and you can easily put out an app in the App Store and have 20 million users from a bunch of countries. So that changes the landscape significantly. And this is why when we work with entrepreneurs, one of the things that we do for them is we help them scale across borders in all of these markets. We open up the networks and do stuff like that.
Luke, what kind of impact are you seeing globally? How are things changing for your firm?
So I can add to both gentlemen's comments. We also help a lot of startups go cross-border very quickly. Even they have only started for probably only a couple of years, they already can scale across many different countries. So the other observation we have seen is because of this tension between US and China, the capital flow, we have seen US startups to pick sides quickly between the US and China. In some of the
Pick
areas,
sides?
pick
They have
sides,
to pick
pick
sides.
So especially in the sensitive areas, maybe they pick the China market, so they go to China earlier than before, right?
What do you mean? They just move their operations there, or are they?
Even maybe the early stage company, they move to target the China market exclusively, right, instead of trying to do both sides. They also, because of the new opportunity in Shanghai Exchange, the Technology Innovation Board, which really gives a lot of startups to exit quickly, so that's not previously possible in China.
Okay, Anna?
So we invest only in the Silicon Valley, but we invest in immigrant founders. So for us, we've been seeing increase in immigrant founders coming to the Silicon Valley. And if you look at the statistics, I'm sure you've seen NVCA, right, with numbers saying that between up to 2006, about 20% of entrepreneurs whose companies went IPO were immigrants. Then from 2006 to 2012, the increase was to about 35-40%. So now we see even high numbers, about 57-60% of at least one founder in the company that went IPO being an immigrant. And so for us, this trend is very, very important. The same we see for investors coming to the Silicon Valley with direct investments or direct investments mostly in growth stage companies, but also as potential limited partners coming to the Silicon Valley. So
It's interesting you raise the question of immigrants in Silicon Valley, and is Sophie Alcorn here? She was a lawyer I was speaking to earlier. I just wanted to ask you guys, she's not, but we had this interesting conversation about deemed exports. Rocky, you know what I'm talking about? Are you guys familiar with this thing that's going to be happening later this year when they decide, the US government created this list of industries, where they are going to create a list of industries that are coming up for more regulation, including they're going to need export control licenses. And that also means that if they hire foreign workers, they will have deemed to have exported their technology to those foreign workers. They're going to need an export license just to hire somebody from China. So is this something that you guys are aware of, or that startups are even have on their radar or dealing with?
Well, I mean, we'll have to deal with it if it happens. It's obviously not helpful for the industry. I mean, the whole idea of technology industry is to be open source and to be global and to be integrated. That's how sort of business is built, right? And this kind of reminds me of China, sort of in the years of industrial revolution, when China was kind of closing to the world and saying, we don't need your technology, let's disintegrate, let's isolate ourselves. I'm not suggesting that the US is in that position now, but this is not a healthy.
How do you counsel your startups to deal with this?
Well, again, we don't really invest in companies that are sort of security conscious. I mean,
Fair enough, yeah, you said that, okay.
that are like that, but as a general observation, honestly, it's not healthy.
Is this something, Rocky, you have a thought on this?
Yeah, so export control rules, this is really interesting. We're on the subject of immigration. So the idea is that a lot of startups here in Silicon Valley, there's, Indian founders, there's, engineers from Eastern Europe, China, from all around the world. So it's very sort of cosmopolitan. It's a melting pot. The export control rules, that deemed export control means that, and this goes to Luke's point, and I'll sort of give you two other facts. Let me give you first fact. The typical venture capital check here for like an angel, you know what that is, $250 million. In China, it's $2 million. So as a startup founder, you have some engineers in your team, and maybe they're from China. You start thinking about the export control rules, you're thinking, I'm going to get a $3 million, $2 million check from China, or I can work really hard and work with the angel networks here and get $500,000 US. Where am I going to put
Better
that?
to open up over there than over here.
So it'll cause this with the notion that in my
Probably more STEM graduates there as well.
Possibly, yeah. So there's a lot of different elements that cause people to go to Shenzhen, for example.
Okay. Luke, do you have any? Is this something that is on your radar?
Yeah, this is something that increasingly more of our startups are asking about. So because they are quite concerned about this potential consequences.
Yeah.
Even though some of them may not be on the list, but it's not as transparent, or it's not clear that who should be concerned. So we are still following the outcome that's coming out.
Okay, so far we've been talking about sad things. I'm a Wall Street Journal reporter, so I'm always digging for tension, right? So let's talk about some happy things. What was the best pitch you guys got today? I saw the speed dating. Dmitry, you were in the speed dating line. That was the most interesting thing I've seen at a tech conference. Did you guys see all this, where you used to have founders just lined up to meet the investors? What was the most successful 30-second? Just as advice for people out here, like what works in 30 seconds, you know?
I think
And by the way, tell me in 30 seconds.
I think the lead from angel launch was actually right on the money. I think you need to be pretty concise. I think you need to ask questions of the investor. You need to pre-qualify if there's interest. So I basically signed up for the same advice that I've given the lady from angel launch gave. I think that was good advice.
Okay. Did you, Anna, have you heard any good pitches today?
Yes, and I think it was great that it was organized this way, you know, a minute and a half, and you get kind of all the information you need, you get the information enough so you understand if you're interested or not. So then you can follow up with the company. So I think it was amazing.
Remind me, what are you most excited about too, by the way? I mean, what?
Well, one company came up, which is kind of a social networking company, and I felt that the founder really understood the problem. He really thought about it. He really had the answers to the questions that I had. And I really wanted to spend like another 20, 30 minutes with that guy, just because he was so precise and so great.
Did you set up a coffee date?
We actually met and spent some time here.
Oh, good. Did you write him a check?
Who knows? We might.
Okay, very good. Luke, what's most exciting for you? Here.
It's I get it. The fake news future.
Are you invested in that company?
We are looking at it.
Okay, I was going to say, it's no fair in mentioning a company you are invested in, because we can't. That's the better way to ask that question. What's the most exciting company you're aware of that you aren't invested in? The one you wish you were in, but you're not, that you missed.
So I wish I were in I get it in the previous round.
Rocky, what do you think?
I didn't get any dates, so.
Well, what's the hottest company that you wish you could invest in if you weren't a lawyer, and conflict it out?
You know what? ByteDance is pretty interesting. In fact, that was on my desk. I just couldn't see it. I didn't visualize. I couldn't visualize that being a $75 million company. So this is why I'm a lawyer.
Okay. Very good.
And the valuation that was on my desk at was 110 million, 110. And now 75 billion. So clearly, I should not be a VC.
All right. Well, do we have any questions in the audience? We haven't given people an opportunity. We got 5 minutes. If anybody wants to jump in, anybody got a question for our panelists? We should make this active.
By the way, the questions to investors is what often gets the conversation started, right? So just ask questions and ask what people want to do with their investors.
All right, we got one. Just what's your name, and go and shout it out. I'll repeat it for people.
What's your biggest obstacle or biggest struggle, biggest impact?
That's great. That was my next question. Biggest challenge.
Biggest challenge?
Well, yeah. What's your biggest obstacle?
Obstacle, impediment, struggle, challenge.
You mean for companies coming over, or?
I don't know. I guess he's giving you the option to answer it as
a broad question. So for those of you who've gone to China quite a bit, you probably know who I am. I think Rolfe knows who I am as well. So we see a lot of deals.
You're a big deal over there, man.
I've been doing this for almost 2 decades. So what we see that are very interesting that's going to be a challenge is obviously the China-US tension. I think that's a big deal. I think this is a big global pivot. And I don't even like to use the word pivot. I think the idea here is that we now have a very sort of adversarial position, right? And this is a political adversarial position. It's not necessarily sort of economics. I think business is still sort of trying to do what is supposed to happen, which is there's globalization, there's people buying from China, there's people buying from the US from China. So there's trade, but politically it's a very tricky environment. And I think Luke mentions it, is that It's the uncertainty, right? When you have uncertainty to that degree or to that level, people hesitate to invest, people hesitate to do certain things, and that's the type of challenge that we see.
Okay.
As the biggest problem, I think.
Okay, Luke, what's the biggest challenge you're dealing with today?
I think it's to figure out how the particular field will evolve. For example, AI, how the technology development will evolve in different areas, but also how the market adoption of that application will evolve. So precisely figure out the timing of this evolution is one of the biggest also.
Okay. Dmitry, you got a thought on there?
I'm just going to add to what Rocky really said. In a different context, I mean, part of our portfolio is in Russia, and obviously geopolitics and sanctions and all that stuff is not helping. So dealing with the consequences of government decisions in politics is kind of the one thing that we cannot control.
Yeah, but you know what? In Silicon Valley, it seems to me that money is green. Am I wrong? I mean, well, hey, NBS goes and allegedly is involved in offing a guy, and people keep taking his money via SoftBank. You know, they'll give you a lot of kind of sound bites. You know, we really thought about whether we really wanted to take this money or not, but you know, we took it. Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and you may be aware of the Jamal Khashoggi murder. Anyway, we got a question over here.
Real quick, so I'm working on medical robots, which are obviously a very capital-intensive business to grow in the market. So my question is, given I'm from China and a Chinese entrepreneur working in Valley, in terms of the amount of, or the order of magnitude in terms of cash, like R&D investments from China, and then anything else from Cayman or Hong Kong in US dollars, then one of the panelists, for give an idea roughly, is R&D deal more like 10 times more than the US dollars of the Chinese investors, or more or at the same size? I mean, how far should we be? Should we just go to the company, or should we stay here?
Good question. I only have 2 minutes, and I don't want to take the panel. So the idea is that when a U.S. company goes to China and seeks capital, there's two types of capital: local capital as well as U.S. dollar capital. U.S. dollar capital, you can take it here in the U.S. But if it's local capital, you need to sort of have a subsidiary in China to take that local currency capital. Local currency capital, typically valuation will be much frothier than what the U.S. investors will be giving you. Because if you bring technology, if you bring sort of innovation, patents and whatnot, typically in China, people will give you a better valuation there. And if you go to Shenzhen, where it's all hardware, if you're a medical device, that's probably where you're going, you would have probably a couple hundred angel VCs that would be willing to line up and give you money. So it's going to be capital, right? If you're taking USD, then you're going to be subject to the same competition for let's say, US dollar investments. So that's the way to think about it. How committed are you to being physically in China? And I think that's probably the case for these two investors here as well. If you go to Russia, I think you'll get exposure to local currency and local investors.
Okay, we got time for one more, I think. Fast one. Over there.
So it seems to me on a global issue that two big problems are IP theft and unfair trade practices. Do you see any resolution to either one of those, or is there another problem that I'm missing?
I don't foresee a solution to that one. That one's tricky because that's up to sort of the political powers, maybe. It would be beyond my pay grade here. So, yeah, absolutely above my pay grade.
Well, but the other, we have venture investors, so they make more than you, so maybe they can.
That's right.
I think IP protection is really a function of what's happening domestically in a given country. So what you tend to see is that in countries which don't have a kind of good domestic technology or media industry that requires IP protection, it becomes very hard to protect foreign IP. As soon as you get domestic indigenous industries, you all of a sudden have a political constituency that actually promotes enforcement. So we have seen that in Russia over the past 5 years. IP enforcement has really gone up substantially, but mostly driven by local companies trying to protect their intellectual property.
Great. Thanks, guys. Anna, Dmitry, Rocky, Luke, appreciate it.